The piercing wail of the hospital's automatic doors couldn't match the hammering in Ethan Parker's chest as he rushed through the emergency room entrance. His 5-year-old son Oliver cradled against his chest. "Please, my son, he's burning up." Ethan gasped at the triage nurse, his voice cracking. "His fever won't break, and he's been in and out of consciousness." The nurse immediately took Oliver's temperature, 103.8 tand, within minutes. They were whisked into an examination room. Ethan's hands trembled as he helped the nurse settle Oliver onto the sterile bed. His son's normally rosy cheeks were flushed scarlet, his curly brown hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. "You're going to be okay, buddy," Ethan whispered, brushing back Oliver's damp hair. "Daddy's right here." The past 3 years as a single father had been a relentless marathon of work, daycare pickups, and bedtime stories. But nothing had prepared him for the absolute terror of watching his son's fever spike dangerously high in the middle of the night. He'd never felt more alone than in this moment, holding Oliver's small hand while medical staff bustled around them. "Mr. Parker." The doctor introduced herself as Dr. Jacqueline Tran. "We're going to start Oliver on IV fluids and medication for the fever. Has he been sick recently?" Ethan shook his head. "Just a runny nose last week. Nothing serious." Fine at bedtime, then woke up burning hot around midnight. While Dr. Tran examined Oliver, Ethan filled out paperwork with shaking hands. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the small room. He'd been here before, too many times in the early days after Rebecca had vanished from their lives, leaving him with a 2-year-old who cried for his mother. The hospital corridors held ghosts of those desperate months. "Daddy," Oliver's voice was thin and reedy. "I'm thirsty here, buddy." Ethan helped him take small sips of water. "The doctors are going to make you feel better." 3 hours passed in a blur of blood tests, temperature checks, and worried glances at the monitors. Dawn was breaking when Oliver's fever finally began to respond to the medication. Ethan stepped into the hallway to call his boss and explain he wouldn't make it to work. His eyes burning from exhaustion, that's when he heard the commotion. The click of determined heels against linoleum. The deferential murmurs of hospital staff. He glanced up to see a woman striding down the corridor, her navy suit impeccably tailored, her dark hair swept into a sleek bun. Something about her silhouette, the way she carried herself, made Ethan's heart stutter. He ducked back into Oliver's room, where his son was finally resting more comfortably. But Oliver's eyes suddenly flew open, fixating on something beyond. Ethan's shoulder. Ethan turned to see the woman from the hallway pausing at their doorway, clipboard in hand, apparently making rounds. "Good morning, I'm Vanessa Mitchell, hospital CEO," she began professionally. "I'm checking in with our emergency department patients too, Mommy." Oliver's voice rang out, clear and certain, his small finger pointing directly at her. "Daddy, look, it's Mommy." The room fell utterly silent. Vanessa Mitchell's clipboard clattered to the floor, her face draining of color. Ethan stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time, the familiar curve of her cheekbones, the distinctive arch of her eyebrows, the deep amber eyes that had once looked at him with love. "Rebecca," he whispered, the name like a prayer and a curse on his lips. I'm sorry," she stammered, backing away. "There must be some mistake. I don't know this child." But Oliver was already struggling to sit up, his fever-bright eyes never leaving her face. "Mommy came back," he said with absolute conviction. "Just like in my dreams." Vanessa Mitchell barricaded herself in her office, hands trembling as she fumbled with the lock. The boy's voice echoed in her head. "Mommy." A knife twist of recognition that shouldn't be possible. She caught her reflection in the window. Vanessa Mitchell, MBA's youngest hospital CEO in the state, respected community leader. Not Rebecca Anderson, the terrified 22-year-old who had fled Boston 8 years ago with nothing but a backpack and suffocating guilt. "This isn't happening," she whispered, pressing her palms against her temples. But the boy's face, Oliver, she'd heard the father call him, was hauntingly familiar. The same dimple in his left cheek, the same cowlick at the crown of his head. He had Ethan's eyes, though. those warm hazel eyes that once looked at her like she was the sun and moon combined. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant about the board meeting in 20 minutes. The real world intruding on this impossible moment. With practiced discipline, Vanessa straightened her jacket, reapplied her lipstick, and locked away the panic. She would handle this like any other crisis. Across the hospital, Ethan sat beside Oliver's bed, his mind reeling. The fever had finally broken, but the doctors wanted to keep him for observation. Oliver had fallen asleep after insisting repeatedly that he'd seen his mother. But how could he recognize her? Ethan murmured to himself. He was barely 2 when she left. His thoughts drifted back to that rainy September night at Boston University, the first time he'd seen Rebecca Anderson. She'd been huddled under the awning of the campus bookstore, her textbooks clutched to her chest, laughing as she tried to dodge raindrops. "Need a lift?" he'd offered, extending his umbrella. She'd hesitated before stepping under its shelter. In that brief moment, her amber eyes meeting his, questioning and then warming, had been the beginning of everything. 3 beautiful years followed. Late-night study sessions turning to deeper conversations, weekend road trips to the coast. Moving into their tiny apartment junior year, they were young and in love, planning their future together after graduation. Then came Oliver, unexpected but welcomed with joy. They'd married quickly, promising forever to each other, until the morning he woke to find her gone. A hastily scrawled note on the kitchen counter: "I can't do this. I'm sorry. Please don't look for me." His phone chimed with a text from his neighbor Diane, who was watching their dog. "Everything okay? Need anything?" Said hospital with Allie. "Fever improving now. Couldn't bring himself to type. And I just saw my wife, who's been missing for 3 years. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Tran entered with a tablet in hand. "Good news, Mr. Parker. Oliver's blood work shows a simple viral infection. With the fever controlled, you should be able to take him home tomorrow." "Thank you," Ethan said, relief washing through him. Dr. Is Vanessa Mitchell the hospital CEO? Dr. Tran nodded. "For about 2 years now. Turned this place around, actually." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Oliver seemed to recognize her. Dr. Tran's expression softened. Children sometimes fixate on people who remind them of someone important." "Has he been asking about his mother recently?" Ethan nodded slowly. "His kindergarten class had a Mother's Day project last month. It was difficult." After the doctor left, Ethan studied his sleeping son's face. He'd tried so hard to be both parents, to fill the void Rebecca left. But some absences couldn't be filled no matter how much love he poured into them. Elsewhere in the hospital, Vanessa sat through her board meeting on autopilot, her thoughts racing. There was no logical explanation for Oliver recognizing her. She'd left Boston before his 2nd birthday, changed her name, moved across the country. The photographs she'd kept were locked in a safety deposit box she rarely visited. After the meeting, she found herself walking toward pediatrics, drawn by an invisible thread. She paused outside Oliver's room, watching through the window as Ethan dozed in the chair beside the bed. Even exhausted, his face held the same gentle strength she remembered. A nurse approached. "Ms. Mitchell, is everything all right?" "Yes," Vanessa said quickly. "Just checking on our younger patients." "That's the Parker boy," the nurse offered. "Sweet family, single dad, doing his best. The little one was quite sick when they came in, but he's improving." "Good," Vanessa murmured.
Ats.
"Good." As she turned to leave, Oliver's eyes opened, finding hers through the glass. He smiled, a small, knowing smile that struck her heart like lightning. He raised his little hand and waved. Without thinking, Vanessa waved back. "You changed your name." Ethan's voice cut through the silence of the hospital cafeteria. It was nearly midnight, 2 days after their first encounter, and Vanessa had finally agreed to meet him while Oliver slept under a nurse's watchful eye. Rebecca stared into her untouched coffee. It seemed necessary at the time. Necessary? Ethan's laugh held no humor. "You disappeared without a trace. Our son cried for you every night for months. I filed missing persons reports. Your parents were devastated. And now I find you running a hospital under a new name, looking like you stepped out of a corporate magazine." She flinched at the mention of her parents. I never meant to hurt anyone. Then why? His voice cracked. Why did you leave us? Vanessa's hands tightened around her cup. The question she'd dreaded for years hung in the air between them, demanding the truth she'd buried so deeply. My brother died, she finally said, the words like glass in her throat. The night before I left. Ethan's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Your brother? You told me you were an only child. Another lie, she admitted. Thomas was 8 years older. He struggled with bipolar disorder most of his life. She took a deep breath. He was in prison when I met you. I was ashamed, so I never mentioned him. He was released the month after Oliver was born. The memories crashed. Through her carefully constructed walls, the late-night phone call from Thomas, his voice slurred and desperate. Sneaking out while Ethan and Oliver slept to meet him at a motel across town, finding him surrounded by empty bottles and pill containers. The horrible stillness when she couldn't wake him. I panicked, she continued, her voice hollow. I was the one who bought him the alcohol. I knew he was on medication. Police would have questioned why I was there, why I enabled him. I was terrified of losing Oliver if they investigated me, so I ran. Ethan stared at her, stunned. You could have told me. We could have faced it together. I wasn't thinking clearly. All I could see was my brother dead because of me, and the possibility of losing my son to the system. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So I made a choice that haunts me every day I left before I could be taken away, becoming Vanessa. Mitchell? I went to California first. Got paralegal work using my mother's maiden name. Put myself through night school for healthcare administration. Each step took me further from Rebecca, until one day I looked in the mirror and truly saw someone else. She finally met his gaze. I convinced myself you and Oliver were better off without me. Ethan pushed his chair back abruptly. That wasn't your decision to make. I know that now, she said softly. But how does Oliver recognize me? He was so young when I left. Ethan's expression softened slightly. The photograph. He has one photograph of you that he keeps by his bed. It's from our wedding day, you're laughing, looking over your shoulder. He calls it his mommy picture. Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. He kept that all this time. I wanted him to know your face, even if you chose not to know his. Ethan. Stewed. I should get back to him, Ethan, she called as he turned to leave. What happens now? He paused, his back to her. Oliver is being discharged tomorrow morning. He thinks his mother has finally come home. What am I supposed to tell him? The question hung unanswered as he walked away, leaving Vanessa alone with the shattered pieces of two lives, the one she'd abandoned and the one she'd built from its ashes. In Oliver's room, little boy slept peacefully, his fever gone, clutching a worn teddy bear. On the bedside table sat a framed photograph of a young woman with amber eyes and a carefree smile. Caught in a moment of happiness before everything fell apart, rain pattered against the windows of Ethan's modest bungalow as he tucked Oliver into bed 1 week after their hospital stay. The boy had recovered physically, but emotionally, he remained fixated on his encounter with Mommy at the hospital. Oliver asked for the 10th time that day, his small fingers tracing the edge of the photograph frame on his nightstand. Ethan sighed, settling on the edge of the bed. I don't know, buddy. Grown-up things are complicated sometimes. But she knows where we live now, right? You told her? I thought nodded reluctantly. Had indeed given Vanessa their address after Oliver's tearful insistence, though he'd made no promises about what might happen next. The past week had been a storm of emotions, anger, confusion, lingering love he couldn't quite extinguish. Time for sleep, he said, kissing Oliver's forehead. Remember, we're meeting Uncle James at the park tomorrow, if the rain stops? After turning on the night light, Ethan retreated to the living room, where bills and paperwork from his construction management job waited. He barely made a dent in the stack when his phone buzzed with a text. Is Oliver feeling better? Vanessa. He stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, he replied, yes, back to his energetic self. 3. Dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. I've been thinking about what you said, about it not being my decision to make. You were right. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. It's a little late for that realization. I know. But I'd like to try to make things right, if you'll let me. Before he could respond, his phone rang the hospital. His heart dropped as he answered. Mr. Parker, it's his night nurse Jennings from Riverside Memorial. Oliver's test results came back from his hospital stay and Dr. Tran would like you to bring him in tomorrow morning. There's an unusual pattern in his blood work she wants to follow up on. What kind of pattern? Ethan asked, panic rising. Is it serious? Dr. Tran prefers to discuss it in person. The appointment is for 9 a.m. After hanging up, Ethan immediately texted Vanessa, they want Oliver back at the hospital tomorrow. Something about his blood work. Her response was immediate. I'll clear my schedule. What time? The next morning, tension hung thick in Dr. Tran's office as she explained that Oliver's blood tests showed markers that could indicate juvenile diabetes. We need to run more comprehensive tests, she said gently. It's too early for a diagnosis, but we want to be thorough. Oliver sat between Ethan and Vanessa, surprisingly calm as he colored in a medical picture book. The adults, however, were anything but calm. What symptoms should we watch for? Ethan asked, his voice tight. As Dr. Tran explained, Vanessa reached over and squeezed Ethan's hand instinctively. He didn't pull away. The morning unfolded in a blur of tests and waiting rooms. Through it all, Oliver remained cheerful. Especially with Vanessa present, proudly showed her his drawings, introduced her to his teddy bear, and chattered about his kindergarten friends. She absorbed every word like precious rainfall after a drought. He has your artistic talent, she murmured to Ethan during one of the waiting periods. Remember those architectural sketches you used to do? I still do them, he admitted. Turn them into a career, actually. I manage residential construction projects now, but I design custom elements for clients too. That's wonderful, she said sincerely. You always had such vision. By afternoon, they had their answer, not diabetes, but a treatable enzyme deficiency that had contributed to Oliver's severe fever response. The relief was palpable as Dr. Tran prescribed a simple supplement regimen, celebration ice cream. Oliver suggested as they left the hospital, looking hopeful. Ethan glanced at Vanessa, a silent question in his eyes. I'd like that, she said softly, if it's okay with your dad. At the ice cream parlor, watching Oliver delight in his chocolate. Sunday, the three of them almost resembled a normal family almost. There were too many unspoken words, too much history hanging between the adults. Yes, your smile, Vanessa observed, her voice barely audible. I used to dream about him. Wonder how he was growing up, if he was happy. He is happy, Ethan said. I've made sure of that. After a pause, he added, but he's always felt your absence. There's a space in him that I couldn't fill, no matter how hard I tried. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. I don't deserve a second chance with him. With either of you. Maybe not, Ethan agreed. But Oliver deserves to know his mother if she's willing to be in his life consistently. He met her gaze directly. Are you? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Outside, the rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden light across their table. Yes, Vanessa whispered. If you'll let me, I want to be in his life. In whatever capacity you think is best. Oliver looked up from his ice cream chocolate smeared across his chin. Can Mommy come see my room? I want to show her my dinosaur collection. Ethan and Vanessa exchanged a long look acknowledgement of pain, tentative forgiveness, the first fragile bridge across. A chasm years in the making. Yes, Ethan finally said. I think that would be okay.